Okay, with Class 2, there's one extra thing I need you to do. You need to do it with Class 1 as well, but it's not as critical. You need to talk me through how you identified the equipment as Class 2. You need to go through the stages of finding the double square marking or double insulated written on it somewhere. If it isn't, I need you to explain to me how you identified it as Class 2 without the marking. After that, it's the same as everything else. Just select a couple of pieces of equipment that are Class 2 and practice demonstrating it and talking me through the physical check, how you plug it into the unit, how you connect the probe, all that sort of stuff. Also, most power supplies plug packs are Class 2, but I don't want you to use them for this exercise. I want you to use proper Class 2 handheld appliances or appliances of some sort, because we're going to cover transformers and power supplies under a different section later on. Don't worry again if you forget something. I'll have a checklist, and if you forget something, I will just prompt you to make sure that all of the bases are covered.
We're going to test a double insulated, that's Class 2 appliance, in this case a heat gun. In fact, the procedure is exactly the same whether it's Class 2 or Class 1. So let's go. Firmly clamp the earth probe onto any exposed metal we can find. Check that the appliance and the tradie are both switched off, and plug in the appliance. Switch on the tradie, and if there's no leakage current, it'll show as a Class 2 pass. Switch on the heat gun and check that we still have a C2 pass. Note that we have a Class 1 earth resistance fail, but then this isn't a Class 1 device and there's no earth, so we can ignore that. Unclip the test probe and check any other bits of exposed metal that might possibly be live. As long as we have a C2 pass, there's no leakage current and the test is completed. It really is that easy. Switch it all off, unplug it and tag it.
Right, this time we'll look at some Class 2 equipment. You'll recall that Class 2 has 2 layers of insulation and no earth wire. It's identified by the double square symbol. It sometimes doesn't have an earth. It doesn't always mean that if it's got an earth pin it is Class 1. Sometimes Class 2 has an earth pin, but it's only there for stability, to hold it firmly in the plug. Generally you find Class 2 has a plastic case. It may also have some metal parts, as my jigsaw does. And to test it, surprise, surprise, it is exactly the same as everything else. You take your probe, you touch it to any exposed metal, and you run the equipment, and you look at the earth leakage scale on your meter. When you look at this, you'll see the top line is Class 1 earth. This doesn't have an earth, it isn't Class 1, it's Class 2, therefore you simply ignore the top line and read off the Class 1, Class 2 earth leakage scale. Okay, occasionally you'll come across something like this. It has absolutely no exposed metal, so it's no way you can test it. So all you can do is give it a good physical check, plug it in and run it. Runs fine, no mechanical damage, send it back to fight. Here's a drill. Similar problem, it has a rotating part, but the standard says you have to check for earth leakage to all exposed metal. So what I like to do with this, I get a small drill, this one's about 3mm, 1/8, whatever you like to call it, and I attach my probe to that. Now that will spin quite safely inside the clamp. Same deal, Oh. Turn it off. Now, when you're using rotating material like this, it is pretty well essential that you turn it off before you plug it in, so that you have your 5-second delay to give yourself a chance just to recheck everything. Okay, I'm ready to go, so I can now run this. Check my earth. No earth leakage. That's all you need to do. Turn it off, unplug it, and it's ready to go back. So I use a drill, a small nail, anything that is smooth and slippery, so that it won't grip on the in the jaws of the probe. Okay, that's all right. We'll tag him later. You will recall when you're testing Class 2 equipment, you do your normal physical check, check your lead is okay, no problems, check the case isn't damaged, check the Class 2 symbol, connect your probe to the smooth shank of a drill, run it, read the result, and that's the end of the test. There is another test you can do. On one type of, well, two I think there are, testers, they issue a blanket made of stainless steel sort of chain mail. The stuff that butchers use on their gloves. You will have seen people who use a lot of knives, they have this glove, and that is wrapped around the drill. If that stuff gets caught up in the chuck, it will be very dangerous. It's strong and it will hurt. I prefer to wrap aluminium foil around. Aluminium foil is better because, as you can see, you can mould it very closely. You then connect your probe onto the aluminium and run the drill. And look for any earth leakage. What this test will do is pick up if there's any cracks in the handle where anything can track through. There might be a bit of dirt, or sometimes in the back here you get a build-up of carbon dust off the commutator. But regardless of which method you use, the aluminium foil or the butcher's paper, it does not take the place of connecting your probe to any exposed metal. You must still do that. I have seen people just wrap this around the plastic and that's the end of the test. That does not replace using your probe to any exposed metal. You can use it with either the run test or the insulation resistance test. It really is your own preference. Here's a Class 2 drill that I took from a workshop the other day. Did my normal physical inspection, checked the lead. Noticed that the plug isn't the original plug, it's been rewired. So by looking in the back, I checked the polarity and I checked that the wire is actually looped around the labyrinth so that it gives stress relief if somebody pulls the cord. And it has an existing danger tag. Now these are one of the tags that are printed off on a machine. They are identical in every way to the normal tag, except on one side they have danger written on them in the same colour as the other tags, and on the other side it doesn't have a retest date and it has fail. So unless you actually read the tag, you can't tell that it's a danger tag. These are the tags that I prefer. They're red and they have danger written on both sides, and it says this item has failed a safety test, do not use, on both sides. This one is very easy to mistake for a pass tag, and it actually was. Okay, so let's do our test on it. As normal, I take my drill, I turn it around, put it in the chuck so that the smooth shank is exposed. Connect the probe first, as I do whenever possible, and I'll plug it into the unit. Now I'll bring the camera up so that you can see the display. Okay, you can see that now. You can see that now in its default condition. It says class 1 earth above 1 ohm, so it's a class 2 piece of equipment. You can ignore that. It says class 1 earth leakage less than 5 milliamps, class 2 earth leakage less than 1 milliamp. It's saying that because that is what it sees. Now, let's run the drill. Now, those of you who are really observant would have seen, just for a fleeting less than a second, it says class 2 fail. Then it comes up with this message: dangerous fault, turn off switch. That's the rocker switch on the side. Okay, so what's happened is the drill has failed. It's a class 2 drill, and this very rarely happens. Okay, notice that you first got a class 2 fail, which means the earth leakage exceeded 1 milliamp. You then got the message on there, dangerous fault, turn switch off. Now that is an additional safety feature that we've built into all of our range, where if you get earth leakage of greater than 9 milliamps, it shuts down. And that is exactly what happened here. The earth leakage exceeded 9 milliamps, so the tradie shut itself down to protect you against any dangerous fault. That is, I think, pretty well unique in electrical testers. Okay, let's have another look at the drill. Here's a bit of a clue. There's oil all over it. So it appears as though perhaps somebody has dropped this in a bucket of oil or spilled oil on it or something. But that was your first clue that there's a problem. It is not clean. It's pretty yucky. So the company actually gave this to me to use as a demonstration unit. Just a couple of points about that drill. If you do get the dangerous fault message on any of the Easy Test range, the only way to reset it is to turn the rocker switch off and back on, and that'll reset the software. The other thing is, when I found that drill, it was on the bench. It had been tested by the previous testers who had put the black tag on it, but it was still in service. If you fail something, make sure it is quarantined. Make sure it is taken off the site, give it to the supervisor, give it to the safety officer, give it to somebody responsible who will remove it from the site. Make sure it doesn't go back into the workplace. I don't know how many times I've found things with danger tags still being used in the workplace. Make sure it is removed completely.